The Barnum and Bailey Circus was created in 1881 when Phineas Taylor Barnum and James Anthony Bailey combined their shows together to make what would be known as the greatest show on earth. The company would later partner with Ringling Bros in 1919. It wasn't until July 6, 1944, when the circus came to the city of Hartford, Connecticut.
When the circus came to the city of Hartford, it was a major event, as it was with any city or town. And of course, that was by design. The organization wanted to promote the circus being in town, and the best way to do that was to march the animals and performers through the streets of the city of Hartford. There was a great deal of excitement. Everyone was interested in the circus, and as many people as possible that could attended. But I always look at things through the lens of history. During that time period, we, of course, this nation was at war. This was approximately 30 days after D-Day. So it was a very tense time indeed. But approximately 8,000 people showed up for the circus, most of them women and children because the men were at war.
People from all over Connecticut came to see the famous Barnum and Bailey show. The show would consist of trapeze acts, animal tamers for polar bears, seals, and tigers, juggling clowns, and their iconic freak show. Temperatures on that Thursday reached over 90 degrees, but that didn't stop the people from attending.
Well, it was a little more sultry and hot than the average day. July 6th was the routine day until after lunch.
The circus seemed to be a safe place for all until a careless cigarette ignited the southwest side of the tent.
Most people didn't believe what they were saying. They thought it was part of the act. As I understand it, it was a three-ring circus. So there's a lot going on. And your focus may have been on one thing and drifting from one to the other, and probably saw some flame and said, well, it's probably part of the act of one of the rings, and then you said, no, that's a fire, let me get out of here as quickly as I possibly can.
No one knows for sure how the circus tent caught on fire. There is even debate on where it started. Some say it was the spotlight overheating at the top of the tent, while others believe it was enemies of war in an attempted sabotage.
For a very long time, the fire was thought to have been started by a carelessly discarded cigarette. But it was Lieutenant Rick Davey, in his diligence as an arson investigator, made an assessment of the humidity on that day, and he came to determine that it would have been physically impossible for a fire to have been started by a carelessly discarded cigarette when the humidity was that high. There are some things that are debated throughout history regarding the circus fire. And one of the things that's debated is precisely how did it get started. And what I mean by that is the most reliable information that I was able to find is that the fire was started by a boy, actually, 14 years of age, by the name of Robert Dale Seegee.
Robert Dale Seegee of Circleville, Ohio, was born in 1929. Even before joining the Ringling Circus, Seegee had a very violent history. When he was 9, living in New Hampshire, Seegee murdered 8-year-old Barbara Driscoll by bashing her head in with a 6-pound rock. He would also set fires to his home often, as well as in a 10-block radius of wherever he went. When he was 14 and the Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey arrived in Portland, Maine, Seegee ran away from his family and joined them, claiming to be 18 years of age. When Seegee left, the fires occurring around his home all seemed to vanish and the circus fires seemed to increase. On the day he joined, the circus had a minor fire on the tent ropes and was extinguished without injury. The circus then moved to Providence, Rhode Island, where a tent flap mysteriously caught on fire but was extinguished without further damage. Hartford was the next stop.
At one point, he actually had an experience the day before the fire was set. He had a negative experience with one of the bosses of the circus, apparently Robert Dale Seegee. Caused some lighting equipment to break, and he was smacked across the face as a result of it.
After he was reprimanded, in a fit of rage, Seegee set fire to the tent. At the time, it was thought to be an accident, so no one was arrested for the start of the fire. 6 years after the Hartford fire, Seegee was arrested on several unrelated arson charges in Ohio. During his detainment, he later confessed in elaborate detail to setting the Hartford fire. CG also described nearly 24 major fires he had set as a child in Maine and in New Hampshire, as well as various strangulations. When he was arrested, CG underwent a psychiatric evaluation where he talked about his reoccurring dreams that have been haunting him for years. CG vividly remembered a Native American rider on a flaming red horse, which would sometimes drive him to commit crimes. After the fire, the rider would return to chase him away from the scene to help him avoid arrest. It wasn't until later years, however, he started dreaming of a woman in white who would rise from the flames above the circus tent telling him, "You caused that." In months following, CG retracted his confession.
In your statement, you talk about seeing a red Indian and seeing the tent on fire.
I was nuts.
Okay.
How can you tell what you say when you're nuts?
Okay, you talked about confessing to other fires. Were you nuts, or did you in fact have a problem with other fires?
They can make you say damn near anything they want to. Under self-hypnosis and everything else.
He was obviously a mentally challenged individual. He was 14 years old. That has to be taken into consideration. No, I'm not saying he should be found not guilty because of his age, but I'm simply saying it had to be taken into consideration. He was a 14-year-old arsonist. But he should have been held responsible because it left a lot of things unanswered, and that had to have been very painful for those who lost their loved ones. Everyone who could see the ball of flame said that it started out relatively small, about approximately 8 feet up, approximately, that they could see. And it quickly rose to the top, and the top of the tent was waterproofed with paraffin waxed and thinned with gasoline. So obviously the fire, when it reached a flammable liquid combined with canvas tent, it spread very quickly. Unfortunately, there weren't firefighters present, and even the extinguishers that were on the premises weren't readily available, so the fire did spread very quickly.
One thing about the circus fire that I want to talk about is the impregnating the canvas with paraffin and gasoline. This being the first year the circus people ever tried it or did it. You mentioned about them sneaking under the tent. No one had the opportunity to do that because that year they dug trenches around the outside of the tent, and they rolled the end of the canvases and railroad ties and buried them underground so the kids couldn't pick the tent up and sneak in.
This was effective in keeping unwanted guests from going in, but also prevented people from getting out. As the flames quickly spread, people stampeded to escape the tent, many being trampled to death. Others were trapped from the steel railings along the front of the bleachers. The animal tunnels blocked many of the entrances, which led to people trying to make their own exits. Local Boy Scouts quickly took out their knives to cut holes through the tent.
There were also seats that weren't secured to the ground. And because the seats weren't secured to the ground, when everyone started to leave and as quickly as they possibly could, the seats became a tripping hazard, and some people, when they tripped and fell, never got up.
First impression I got was the sight of elephants coming down Barbara Street. As we turned from Westland Street, we went down Barbara Street north, and we had to weave our way through a herd of elephants that were being led off the circus ground. And as we pulled up in front of the circus, tent just collapsed, and you could see people running around, some of them with clothes burning right on their backs, looking for their children even, particularly mothers.
There is an old saying that says, or that goes, time heals all wounds. It's a lie. It's a lie. And anyone who believes it doesn't know anything about the Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey's circus fire.